My name's Jeanne Willis. I'm an author and I've written over 400 children's books now. And my very favourite, people always ask me, which is the favourite book you've ever written? And it has to be this one, Tadpole's Promise. There are lots of reasons for that. First of all, I really love the design. It's illustrated by Tony Ross. And instead of doing the book up that way, he had the clever idea of doing it up this way because it's all about a caterpillar and a tadpole who fall madly in love. But before I read you the story, you may ask, why are you so crazy about caterpillars and tadpoles? Well, I've loved them for years and years, ever since I was at school. What happened was, there was a tree outside the school. There I am, when I first saw this tree full of caterpillars, and there's my granddad who used to pick me up from school. And when I saw that the tree was full of the most beautiful caterpillars, he always used to bring a jar along so I could collect them. Now, my granddad was actually born in the time of Queen Victoria. As you can see there, he's in his army uniform because he was a soldier in World War I. And actually, he was my oldest best friend. We used to do everything together, and in particular, collecting these caterpillars, which look like this. Now, they're beautiful, aren't they? They look just like rainbows. And they're very velvety, and they're called lackey moths. They turn into lackey moths, so they're actually quite a dull little moth, but that's just such a beautiful caterpillar. And you can see the dots at the front. They look like he's got eyes, and he looks as if he's got a smile. So I learned from watching the caterpillars and butterflies how they turn into, how the eggs turn into butterflies. So we start with the egg, and that hatches into a caterpillar, and that turns into a chrysalis, and then the adult insect comes out and turns into the butterfly. Now, I've got the caterpillar here. I have to miss out the middle stage of the cocoon, but if you watch, you will see it turn into a butterfly. There. Now, every time that happens, because I collect caterpillars now and butterflies, I just find that absolutely magical that a little creature can do that magic trick. And it's called metamorphosis, for those of you who don't know. Now, when I grew up, I remembered my granddad and our wonderful trips collecting caterpillars, and I wrote a poem all about it. It's called Zanzibar. I'm just going to read it to you. I found a caterpillar. I called him Zanzibar. I gave him willow leaves to eat and put him in a jar. He wandered up and down his twig. He ate and ate and ate. I've never seen a caterpillar put on so much weight. And then he seemed to shrink a bit, and off he went and hid. He turned into a chrysalis beneath the jam jar lid. He slept for many days and nights, when suddenly he stirred. He stretched his wings and fluttered like a scarlet hummingbird. I didn't want to let him go. But I heard Grandad say, when things grow up like butterflies, they have to fly away. There. Now then. Now this little creature is a silk moth caterpillar. And I said, I keep caterpillars all the time. I can buy the eggs online. Wait and see, look after them until they turn into moths or butterflies. Now this one spins cocoons. I've got some cocoons here. Where are my cocoons? Aha. Right, there's a silk moth cocoon. Now, if I was to unravel that, I'd have enough silk to make maybe a silk tie or something, because this is the actual silk that people use. They spin it from the silk moth. Now, that's a metre of silk, let's say. That's a metre. It's quite long. But on this tiny, tiny little cocoon, the silk is so fine, if you stretched it out, it would be 1,000 times longer than this. 1,000 metres of silk on this one little cocoon. But look at these cocoons. Oh, hang on, I'll show you what the silk moth looks like when it hatches there. That's the silk moth when it's come out of the cocoon. You can't see on the camera, but there's a tiny little hole at the end there, and that's where the moth would crawl out. Now these are the biggest cocoons in the world, and they belong to the giant atlas moth. And I got some of these, and there is one. Now they're so strong that in Thailand, the people use them to put their loose change in sometimes. But you see this piece of string? If you have a cocoon like this, you have to put a little bit of cotton through it and hang it up, like those ones in the picture. Because if this is lying on the floor and the moth emerges, it's so big, all its wings would crumple and it would never be able to fly, which would be really sad. So I hung all my cocoons up, and every day I sprayed them to keep them nice and moist as if they were still in the rainforest. And nothing seemed to happen. And I waited for months and months and months, and I thought, oh dear, they're just not alive. Then one day, I went upstairs to my attic where I do all my writing and keep all my animals. And there was the most amazing creature. There. That is a giant atlas moth. And if you were to put your two hands together, if you're small, that's how big she was. Now I had 6 of these wonderful creatures, all flying around my attic, and they laid eggs as well. Now if you look at the wingtips, I don't know if you can see, they might remind you of another animal. It's actually, they've got a pattern on them just like snakes' heads in the corner of their wings. So if a predator comes, some kind of bird who wants to eat them for lunch, they can flap their wings. It looks like 2 snakes. So the birds hopefully would go away. Mind you, it'd have to be a big bird to go after that butterfly, moth rather, because they're as big as bats. I've always collected tadpoles. Again, my granddad used to go fishing with me, and we used to get tadpoles from the local pond and bring them home. And I've got my little tadpole here just to demonstrate. So first of all, there's the spawn. Then when that hatches into a tiny tadpole, it starts to eat and grow. It's a vegetarian at that point. And then gradually, it grows its back legs first, then its front legs or arms, whatever you want to call them. And then it even grows little eyelids to stop its eyes getting hurt by the bright sun. Then finally, it absorbs its tail into its body. And that's to nourish it till it can catch its first fly, because its tail's quite fatty, so it gives him some sort of nutrition. So I'm going to now turn this tadpole into a frog. It comes with legs. And there you have it. Metamorphosis of a tadpole into a lovely frog. Then on a rainy day, they all leave the pond, no bigger than the size of my fingernail, and off they hop to a new life. Right. I've always kept all kinds of weird animals, and this is my pet toad, David. He's 25 years old, but he's not like the kind of toad you'd find in the ponds here. He's from South Africa. He's got a smooth claws, a smooth-clawed toad he's called, and his tadpoles are very, very different to the ones we find in the ponds here. Let me show you the tadpoles. They're completely see-through, and they're almost square. And the funny thing about them is, if they've eaten a little worm, you can still see the worm swimming in its tummy for quite a while. Now, My toad David had a female with him, and I've got little toads that belong to him all over England that people have kept as pets. So my fascination with caterpillars and frogs made me write this story, Tadpole's Promise, which I will now read for you. Where the willow meets the water, a tadpole met a caterpillar. They gazed into each other's tiny eyes and fell in love. She was his beautiful rainbow, and he was her shiny black pearl. I love everything about you, said the tadpole. I love everything about you, said the caterpillar. Promise you'll never change. I promise, he said. But as sure as the weather changes, the tadpole couldn't keep his promise. And the next time they met, he had grown 2 legs. You've broken your promise, said the caterpillar. Forgive me, begged the tadpole. I couldn't help it. I don't want these legs. All I want is my beautiful rainbow. And all I want is my black pearl. Promise me you'll never change, said the caterpillar. I promise, he said. But as sure as the seasons change, the next time they met, he had what had he got? He'd grown arms. Well, that's twice you've broken your promise, cried the caterpillar. Forgive me, begged the tadpole. I can't help it. I don't want these arms. All I want is my beautiful rainbow. And all I want is my shiny black pearl. I'll give you one last chance, said the caterpillar. But as surely as the world changes, the tadpole couldn't keep his promise. The next time they met, he had no tail. You've broken your promise 3 times, and now you've broken my heart, said the caterpillar. But you're my beautiful rainbow, said the tadpole. Yes, but you're not my shiny black pearl. Goodbye. And she crawled up the willow branch and cried herself to sleep. But one warm, moonlit night, she woke up. The sky had changed, the trees had changed, everything had changed except for her love for the tadpole. And even though he'd broken his promise, she decided to forgive him. She dried her wings and fluttered down to go and look for him. Where the willow meets the water, a frog was sitting on a lily pad. Excuse me, she said, have you seen my shiny black? But faster than she could say pearl, the frog leapt up and he swallowed her in one great gulp. And there he waits, thinking fondly of his beautiful rainbow and wondering where she went. So he didn't realise that he'd eaten his beloved, beloved girlfriend. So there we go. That's nature for you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that story.